1993, when I joined as a women in development specialist, there was a little bit of money at that time to implement a module in just one country on women's empowerment, or women's status, as we used to talk about this at that time. And we did that in Egypt. I was hired to develop the module and to help implement it. So the 1995 DHS actually has, for Egypt, actually has a very extensive women's status or women's empowerment module. Data from that module formed the basis for our thinking thereafter on what DHS can include and what can be measured at the household level. It's an interesting question when you are thinking about what can be measured at household level and what can be measured in a relatively standardized fashion at the household level across countries. Because when we think about gender and we think about women's empowerment, it can mean many different things depending upon what culture you're looking at. It can mean different things in different cultures. Today, however, USAID and other donors have put gender very much on their agenda. And we have a huge push, both for increasing amounts of data on domestic violence, as well as on indicators that would allow us to measure how we are doing on achieving gender equality worldwide. We do see that the domestic violence data, as well as the female genital cutting data, often get a lot of attention from governments and policymakers. We do not often find that issues around women's roles within households get the same level of policy attention in countries. As a consequence of the attention, at least in selected countries, to domestic violence, and in some cases even, say, the first lady of the country taking this up as an issue, for example, in Kenya, we do find that there have been far more programs put into the field to address some of these issues. With regard to FGC, we do see a lot more laws on the books against it. This, of course, is going to begin to affect how we in the DHS are actually able to measure FGC going forward, because if FGC is illegal, women are unlikely to report, especially FGC for their daughters, even if it is taking place. So that's a challenge that we are probably going to face as more and more countries adopt laws against female genital cutting. An area that I think is going to become increasingly relevant, and already we see a lot of focus on it, is the issue of asset ownership within households. How are assets that are likely to be both, and this includes both financial assets as well as physical assets like land, how are these types of assets divided up between women and men within households, or who owns them, who controls them? For agriculture in particular, with the Agricultural Empowerment Index becoming a key indicator for the Feed the Future programs, Food for Peace programs, this is a very, very big issue, because land ownership or control of land by women is a very key aspect of women's empowerment. It is not a coincidence that the media has been so focused recently on the incidents, the horrid incidents of rape in India, in South Africa, and in many other countries at this particular time. And I think the DHS data are really powerful in showing that, in fact, forced sex is experienced by women by almost, anywhere between 10% and 20% of women in many, many countries. Women are not just raped by strangers, they are often also raped by their own husbands, as they report in the domestic violence module. So I think the DHS data highlights the fact that although today the focus is on rape by strangers, we should not lose sight of the fact that forced sex remains an issue in women's daily lives. March 8th is International Women's Day, and we should really take this opportunity both to emphasize the great strides women have made over the past few decades, as well as highlight the areas in which women are still lagging behind. And this is where I think DHS data comes into its own, because we have data that can both tell us how women are doing, as well as where they are really lagging behind, and gender equality remains a distant dream.